Hello, my name is Akira, and this is my video introduction. I read The Adventures of Unemployed Man. This is a comic by Eric Oregon and Gan Golan. This comic was about regular, everyday citizens and heroes alike. From my standpoint, it was a build of fiction and nonfiction tropes. To me, the surrounding topic was government corruption and how gullible the citizens can be. Examples of this include the big corporations in power, people in power who are all rich and take advantage of those who are poor and below them. An example of the fiction trope was the Just Us League and the main character, Bruce Payne. These both reminded me of the Justice League and Batman and his alter ego, Bruce Wayne. Alternatively, though, the League are villains, and Bruce Payne and his alter ego, the Ultimatum, are poor and have been easily replaced after he was fired. Unemployed Man fights for the lower class. This comic was published by Little Brown and Company. They're an American publisher founded in 1837 by Charles Coffin Little and James Brown. The comic starts with Bruce Payne, who's an alter ego, begins as the Ultimatum, who was a rich superhero who thought he was helping poor people by telling them to think positively and stop being lazy. He would indent an icon in their forehead, reminding them every day they look in the mirror to think positively, when in reality, he was a part of the problem, and the lower class simply were not making enough money to feed themselves or others they had to care for. An example from the book is when the Ultimatum finds a woman going through the dumpster and tells her to get a job and stop being lazy. When she was fending for her children and she only had money enough to feed her kids, not herself. When the Ultimatum comes to the realization he is one of the bad guys in the situation because he works with the big corporations and he's their mascot, he tries to change, but he instead gets fired from his job. And he goes through homelessness and hunger, but he teams up with other superheroes who are going through similar or the same things, who want to help defeat the Invisible Hand and the Just Us League. The Invisible Hand takes advantage of people for the benefit of money for itself and the Just Us League. They release a toxic debt blob on Wall Street, which can only be downsized through giving it money. However, with the power of Everyman, Wonder Mother, Plan B, Good Grief, Master of Degree, and many others, the Unemployed Man is able to defeat the Blob and the Just Us League. I personally believe the comic was well thought out, from the characters, corporations, problems they face, personal battles, and even the solution, everything paired together. The way they were able to stick to the theme of superheroes fighting for good while also putting them in real-life situations was thoroughly presented. I enjoyed the way the characters resembled actual superheroes in terms of suits, names, and some personalities, while also holding their own differences. I've seen that in Bruce Payne and Bruce Wayne. They were both rich at one time, but however, Bruce Payne went through crisis and he was fired. This can be seen in Wonder Mother as well, who resembles Wonder Woman, but she fights for her child and woman while using her jet created from pieces of the glass ceiling. One review from one person who read the book on Amazon said societal woes are deftly handled. I 100% agree with this statement because it touched on many topics like the recession while also carrying lighthearted sarcasm, puns, and characters, which helps keep readers interested. One of the sources that I found is from LA Reviews. The writer Jervy Tervalon goes into detail about the comic Unemployed Man and how well it depicts real-life scenarios in the way it does. Jervy states the comic is an instruction manual on resisting oligarch oppression. Jervy goes into detail of the superhero White Rage and how he's depicted by real things that happen in society. I can say that this perspective helped me better understand the comic because I hadn't even given it a second thought that it could be seen as something to help in reality. I better understood certain things in the comic when I put it in the perspective that it was an instruction manual. If we know that something has even the slightest possibility of happening, we can take precautionary measures to avoid and prevent it. In this case, if we know those in power are leading us downhill, we can take initiative like using our collective power and voice. These are both metaphors that are referenced in the text. Another perspective I read was from Klefeld on comics. This review was written by Sean Klefeld. Something that stood out to me in the review was when he says the authors were able to weave some sometimes ethereal concepts into visual metaphors perfectly suited to the superhero genre. I agree with this because some touchy or sensitive topics can be hard to bring up without hurting the entire plot in general and making it less of a comic, more of an informative essay with illustrations. The review goes on to explain how the comic is able to balance the real-life crisis while also taking it back to the real superheroes as well. This review also helped me put names to faces that I had been looking for, including Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman, who were both a part of the Just Us League and were major people that were in power. Honestly, I really enjoyed this comic for all the aspects. Some aspects I liked were the illustrations, figuring out the metaphor meanings, the characters and superhero likeness, and the real world points. Going into detail, the comic, even though it came out in 2010, had an old-timey feeling with the illustrations. Examples like the colors and some of the old magazine advertisements that were included excited me because I enjoyed reading them. They were fun. The metaphors all had serious meanings. Sometimes they didn't as well. Like, my favorite was the one, of course, of Wonder Mother, who realized women do not succeed nearly as much as men in certain businesses. All while she was pregnant, she got fired and was stuck underneath the glass ceiling. And instead of conforming to it, she instead broke it and built a jet from the pieces. Lastly, I also like the way some superheroes resembled actual people or heroes in other comics, and sometimes they'd be used to prove a point that the author strived to make. I like that in White Rage, and I seen White Rage and the Hulk as similar. However, White Rage is more depicted as a negative connotation. This comic changed my perspective because it helped me know that issues can be addressed in fun ways, and comics don't always have to be about fun, stupid things, but they can be informative as well, while also being fun.